Braves and baseball fans, it's time to take a trip from coast to coast across Major League Baseball.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Fly ball deep left center. Grissom on the run. Yes! 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 The Atlanta Braves have given you a championship. Listen to this crowd.
Left side, Swanson to first. Braves, world champions.
Braves and baseball talk, straight from the diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation.
Here's Grant McAuley.
Hello and welcome to From the Diamond. I am Grant McAuley. These are the Kia studios of Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It is the weekend. In fact, it is a Sunday. So we are, closing out another weekend for the Atlanta Braves. Are closing out a series as they began a homestand with an all-new look on the field and what they were hoping to be more of the same for the first couple of weeks for this team as well. The Braves off to a good start to their season. Hasn't all been perfect, but as far as what you could have asked for and what you were looking for in terms of winning more than you lose, Braves are checking some boxes here in the early going. We're going to delve into some of the successes for the Braves, some of the areas, of course, they're looking to improve, and some of the guys who could be getting healthy that could be helping this club out as well. A lot to talk about on that front, but a very jam-packed show that we are going to get into. The Braves looking for a series win over the Cleveland Guardians as they close out the weekend. It's a Sunday night game, so we'll get you set up for that. And also, it's been a little bit of an eventful week since last we spoke here on From the Diamond about a week or so ago. The Braves were out in Los Angeles. They were closing out a trip, a 7-game trip, in which they went 4-3. But the story for the whole trip, the record almost felt secondary, although the wins seemed like the most important thing. But there was a fight, and that fight resulted in a suspension for Reynaldo Lopez, resulted in a highlight that we will not soon forget for Braves manager Walt Weiss, who was right in the center of everything, taking down Jorge Soler. The Braves World Series hero from 2021 was playing the part of the villain, I guess, if you want to call it that. If you want to use a little bit of hyperbole, I guess that's what it was when it came to the head-to-head between the Angels, the Braves, and more specifically for Reynaldo and for Jorge Soler, who were not on the same page. Both guys were suspended. We'll get into the details behind that, but also for Walt Weiss. He introduced himself to Braves country in a way that I don't think any manager in Major League Baseball has ever been able to introduce himself. So we'll delve into that story a little bit later. And, of course, when I talk about the new look for this team, City Connect 2.0 debuted this week. The Braves unveiled it on Thursday officially. So, obviously, all that merchandise is flying off the shelves. And the Braves, more to the point, were able to wear their brand-new threads and open up the series in the weekend with a big win over the Guardians, wearing those new City Connect 2.0s with the powder blue tops, the powder blue hats. A new take on, I think, some classic design elements from the Atlanta Braves history, the archive. And we'll give you the behind-the-seams story. That's right, behind-the-seams story of how exactly these things were designed from concept to execution. I spoke with their creative director, Insung Kim, who gave me a lot of insight on where exactly the Braves wanted to go and what they wanted to accomplish and why they feel like they were able to check all the boxes with this brand-new City Connect. You'll also hear from a couple of the players who were sporting those uniforms over the course of the weekend. Austin Riley and Matt Olson shared their thoughts with me on that. And I've also got a couple of special guests, a couple of special stories, if you will. I've got Braves great Dale Murphy, who sat down with me probably a year, maybe 2 years ago now, to tell me the story behind one of the big influences of the City Connects, and that was the Power Alley poster, and he was wearing the Braves powder blue road uniform at that time. That was a big inspiration, I think, for what the Braves were looking to accomplish with the City Connects. So Dale was nice enough to share with me the story behind the Power Alley poster, the photo shoot for Nike, and the stickball poster, which is maybe not quite as well known, but maybe my favorite of the two. It was Dale Murphy and Doc Gooden playing stickball in an alley in front of the Brooklyn Bridge. Pretty cool stuff. So Dale's going to tell us the whole story of that. And I got to sit down with a friend of mine from a long time ago in my minor league days. His name is Stephen Vogt. You may have heard of him. He's the manager of the Cleveland Guardians. He gave me some time over the weekend to discuss a few things about his team, his time in Atlanta, our minor league days, and, of course, what the Guardians are looking to do in 2026. As we get started here on the show, I want to remind you, as always, you can find From the Diamond wherever you get your podcast. You can also find it right there on that handy-dandy Odyssey app that you might be listening on right now, where you can stream all of the great shows and all the great content from 92.9 The Game. So be sure to check that out. Make sure you're following me on social media at Grant McAuley on most platforms. You can also head on over to FromTheDiamond.com. There's a nice little navigational bar. It's got all the links for all the stuff I've got going on, and so you can stay connected that way. And if you're into baseball cards, I'm also doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I've got even more planned for my Wax Packing Nostalgic channel, if you will, the content that we're creating, the vintage baseball cards. And I say vintage, well, I feel vintage with every year that passed because I am a child of the 80s, a TBS kid. I guess that's why I was enjoying so much some of the inspiration and the design points for these City Connects. But long story short, I still like opening those packs of baseball cards from 40-something years ago. So if you like watching that kind of thing, you can check me out on social media. You can even find me on TikTok, where all the kids are. So I feel very cool, very hip, and very plugged in as far as that's concerned. If I ever figure out how the app works, I'll let you know. But if you want to see me open baseball cards, to make a long story very short, that's a great place to do that. In other news, the Braves have had some good things going on for the first couple of weeks of the season. Now, not everything has gone according to plan. They had a big night on Friday, blowing out the Cleveland Guardians, and then they turned around and could not find any runs that they needed in a loss on Saturday. So there have been some highs, there have been some lows, if you will, but that is to be expected, I think, with just about any season that you're going to find. But the Braves, one of the best teams in the National League, a 9-6 record over their first 15 games. I think if I'd offered you that on opening day, if you're a Braves fan out there, you're going to take that. And how exactly did the Braves get off to a 9-6 start this year, when last year I don't think they were able to get their 9th victory until much, much, much later in the month of April, just based alone on the 0-7 start that they were dealing with. And again, we are going to drop that as a narrative point because the Braves have been able to exercise that demon by going out and winning and at least splitting series thus far this season. But a 9-6 record has them atop the National League East in the very, very early standings. You'll see the Miami Marlins, the second-place team, on Monday, beginning a 3-game series there. So the Marlins are doing some things here lately, although they have lost 6 out of 10 heading into their Sunday contest. But be that as it may, the Phillies are a 500 club. They got off to a little bit of a rough start and have rallied, winning 6 out of 10 here lately. The Mets are 7-8. And the Nationals are 6-8 on the season, though they have lost 7 out of 10. So those are the recent happenings in the National League East. But the Pittsburgh Pirates at 9-5 are a little bit ahead of the Braves, half a game, I would say, as far as the second best record in the National League. And you won't be surprised to know that the Dodgers have the best record in baseball at 11-3. So the Braves have been able to kind of reassert themselves, if you will, to the place that they expect to be, and that is at or near the top of the National League East standings and in the playoff picture. And typically, annually, until what was going on in late 2024 and all of 2025, one of the perennial powerhouses in the National League. And what is the Braves' success built on thus far? Well, I would argue that there's been a little bit to like on both the pitching side and the offensive side, but it's inarguable that the Braves have been one of the best fielding teams in baseball. Now, we'll get to the good pitching in a moment. I'll get to some of the offensive highs and some of the other things that I think might be indicators that this offense has another level that it can find when it comes to individual performance. But as I looked at some of the early trends across all of baseball, the Braves were leading all teams in outs above average in the field. And that's one of those kind of advanced metric stats that just lets you know that in the field, guys are not only making the plays they're supposed to, but they are above average. So the Braves' good fielding is obviously going to benefit their pitching staff, which is leading Major League Baseball in ERA. 2.50 ERA for the Braves. Pitching staff this year, they've thrown 3 shutouts. That's tied for the most in Major League Baseball. And opponents are batting 191 against the Braves pitching staff. And until they had a little bit of a hiccup on Saturday night with 8 walks, which is very uncharacteristic of the Braves, they had walked the fewest batters in baseball. And the bullpen has turned in the best ERA by any group of relievers across all 30 teams, with a 2.06 ERA and the second fewest walks. And again, last night kind of factored into falling behind the Phillies as far as that's concerned. But the early returns, I guess my point is, on this pitching staff is that it has exceeded expectations because you kind of wondered, how are they going to be able to piece it together with significant members of the rotation missing? Because you're counting on not only some guys that are coming off of injury, but you're counting on, and I'm saying this with both fingers crossed if you're a Braves fan out there, that you don't run into any other injuries. And thus far, the Braves have been able to check that box. They've gotten some good performances all through the rotation and serviceable performance by the guys that they're kind of asking to just hold down the fort until you can get back the Spencer Striders the Spencer Schwellenbachs and the Hurston Waldrops of the world, who could definitely impact this team. Though with Waldrop and Schwellenbach, I think you might be waiting a little while. And when I say that, not because they've had a setback, but just because they haven't gotten to the throwing progression and they're just not imminent. Their return is not imminent. But Spencer Strider is another story. He went on the road trip with the Braves out to Los Angeles, and before that out to Arizona, was throwing some bullpens there, and through a live batting practice yesterday at Truist Park. He got what I would refer to as 3 innings of a live batting practice, a sim game. I think Walt Weiss was a little bit interchangeable with those terms, but they wanted to have him go out to the mound, sit down, go back out to the mound, sit down, go back out, get those 3 up-downs, as they like to call them. So 30-ish pitches, something like that. Mid-90s with the fastball, if you're into that sort of thing, which most people with Spencer Strider are hyper-aware of what the radar gun is telling you, but it was 95 miles an hour or so. And I would say that's not really anything that I would spend a bunch of time worrying about, because it was an empty stadium in the afternoon trying to get some work in, coming off an oblique injury. You're not out there trying to max it out. You're just out there trying to make sure I feel good enough to be able to take that next step. And that next step is going to come on Thursday as he begins a rehab assignment. But let's hear from Braves manager Walt Weiss. Got a couple of cuts for you from him. Overall, the update on Spencer Strider following his sim game that he threw on Saturday at Truist Park. It seems like Spencer Strider's in a very good spot.
He's checking each box as he goes. That was another one today, facing hitters live. Ball was coming out good. He felt good afterwards. So, yeah, like I said, he's on the right path. But you know how it is with starters. It takes time because we got to build him back up now. So that's going to take probably the rest of the month if I had to guess. You know, he's going to have to go out and make multiple rehab starts. And it just takes time to get a starting pitcher back.
I think we all knew that, and I talked about this, and I asked Walt Weiss about it, and you'll kind of hear some of that conversation here in a moment. But, I mean, there's never a good time for an injury. An oblique injury is something that can linger. So if you push it too far, you just end up having to sit around basically for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, letting the thing heal. And then you have to start figuring out, how can I start to ramp up the physicality? And then for a starting pitcher like Spencer Strider, and this was kind of the frustration that's built into it. Again, not that there's ever a good time for an injury, but you just spent the entire spring building yourself up to be ready to start the regular season, and you had to hit that pause button, which really ends up being a reset button. So he's been able to, I think, go through those different progressions that he needed to by throwing bullpens and side sessions. Now he's throwing the live BP. You get him out there in a rehab start on, let's say, Thursday. We don't know what affiliate he'll be at. Gwinnett is the only one of the Braves affiliates that's not at home, so we'll find out exactly where Spencer's going to drive up to and get his work in. But 40 to 45 pitches, I think, is a realistic expectation for that first start. So that kind of lets you know the next one, maybe you get into the 55 to 60 pitches. Beyond that, maybe it's a 70 to 75, then 85 to 90. I mean, you get where I'm going with this. You're going to have to build it up for a little while. But I did ask Walt Weiss, because the Braves had said at the time, and we are seeing this because it's only a couple of weeks into the season, as Spencer Strider is now ready to go out on this rehab assignment, that they did catch the oblique injury, which can be, again, a very, very difficult injury to manage a little bit early, and that ultimately could be a good thing to have Spencer Strider back, if not by the end of the month, as soon as they can.
I do think that it could have been a lot worse if he makes that start in spring training. Remember when we retrace our steps back to that day, and he makes that start and the thing's way worse, and now we're looking at multiple months. So I think it was great that we in a sense got out in front of this to some degree. And, you know, on the back end of this, it's going to be a lot quicker.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thing. And I mean, quick is a relative term. Again, this is not something that you're without your, number 2, number 3 starter at the worst with what Spencer Strider was a year ago. There were some peaks and valleys, but we all know what he is if he's going right. And we all know if you're sizing up your options that Spencer Strider's one that you'd like to have available to you. Losing him for 4, 5, 6 weeks, not what you want to have at any point during the season, especially when your rotation was already a little bit thin. And you had Grant Holmes and Reynaldo Lopez coming off significant injuries and at least being question marks when you come into the year. Chris Sale had kind of that freaky fluke injury last year, diving, breaking a rib. Not as concerned about him. He seems to have looked fine thus far this season, and I expect Chris Sale, as the season rolls along, to just be the guy that he is. But Reynaldo Lopez has looked good thus far. Grant Holmes has looked good thus far. Bryce Elder has looked great thus far. I mean, that's one of the big stories, and we'll talk about it more as we kind of delve into the pitching staff and some of the guys who have really helped the Braves out to the start that they've gotten off to this year. Bryce Elder, his name is, I think, toward the top of the list of, I don't want to call them unsung heroes, because I think people are kind of taking notice that this is a guy that they're going to need to contribute, and he's doing exactly what you need to do for him. But it's not just all about the pitching. The Braves are 5th in Major League Baseball in runs scored with 77 of those. And on first glance, that does look great. But you got two big games that account for 28 of those 77 runs. And I think if you're just being honest with yourself as a Braves fan, you've seen some of the highs. You've also seen some of the lows. The Braves were shut out for the first time this year on Saturday. It came after scoring 11 runs in Game 1, so go figure. That's what baseball will do for you. But I would say this, more so about the 77 runs, about being top 5 in the National League in runs scored, which I think the Braves offense has a capability of doing. They've done a lot of this without much from Reynaldo Acuna Jr., who is starting to heat up. They've done a lot of this without Austin Riley. They've done a lot of this without really having all of the pieces clicking in the way that I think that they can, whether that's Acuna at the top. Drake Baldwin has been terrific. He's holding down the second spot of the order. Matt Olson's off to a good start this year, and he demolished the baseball on Saturday night, by the way. And when you watch it, and this is just an aside, Matt Olson has one of the, I think, quietest but most confident, struts out of the box when he knows he's absolutely just tattooed a baseball. It's almost so low-key that it's one of the best reactions that you'll find on the team. He just kind of turns and walks. It's like he kind of looks toward the dugout. He just kind of drops the bat, and then he kind of turns back and starts heading down the line, and then you realize that the baseball has landed on the roof of the chop house because he's got that kind of power. But Matt Olson's off to a good start. Austin Riley, I think, is still working through some things. We haven't seen him really get going yet, and that's one of the big question marks for this club. I don't think a lot of people are looking at Reynaldo Acuna Jr. and saying, okay, well, who is he? What is he? When is he going to get back to being himself? I think with Ronald, he's earned the, I guess if you want to call it, he's built a reputation that even if he does go through one of these lulls, he's going to course correct in a way that's going to make you forget all about it because he's that guy. But with Austin, it's a couple of years of, as soon as he would seem to figure something out, season-ending injury. That's what happened in 2024. He got on a good roll, then he has a broken hand, a broken wrist, and misses the rest of that season. It negatively affected him, I think, going all the way through the offseason because he was in a cast for 13 weeks. And then he went into 2025, got off to a slow start, started to figure some things out, then had the core muscle injury, and was unable to come back and play the final, 6 weeks of the season last year. So for Austin, I think there's just an awful lot to prove this year, and nobody wants to prove it more than he does. And you're going to hear from him a little bit later on when we delve into the City Connects conversation. So not necessarily all about the hitting, all about the early results for his season, but I do think that there's just another level there. And in other rehab news, Sean Murphy is going to begin a rehab assignment with AAA Gwinnett. It was delayed over the weekend due to a family matter, but he should get that thing started, I believe, on Tuesday. And if you can get Sean Murphy back in the fray, and I think we've seen some good and some bad from Jonah Heim. This is a guy that is a capable major league catcher, but he definitely had one to forget yesterday with that throw down the third base line. That's probably one of the worst throws you're ever going to see from a catcher. But he's also been behind the plate for some of the Braves' best work on the mound this year. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad or the bad with the good, whichever way you want to look at that. And they're usually attached, at least in some way, shape, or form. But getting Sean Murphy back, more to the point, could benefit the Braves pitching staff. It will take some of the load off of Drake Baldwin. And if you've got a healthy Sean Murphy, that's another power bat that you can also mix into this lineup, which has shown some significant power at times thus far this year, but without Reynaldo Acuna Jr. going deep left, right, and center. He hit his first home run of the year on Friday as well, and you still haven't gotten a home run from Austin Riley. So there are some things I think that are going to be coming for this club. Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies also could contribute. You've gotten some good things from Mauricio Dubon thus far. Mike Yastrzemski, I think, needs to get it rolling again, but it has the makings of a really good lineup. And if you've got a good lineup that can score some runs and a pitching staff that can continue doing anything close to what it's been doing and get some reinforcements, there could be some pretty good stuff ahead for the Braves. So we'll delve into that a little bit more as we continue. We'll talk about the hot start for the Braves. We're also going to talk about the City Connect 2.0 that the Braves debuted over the weekend with the Baby Blues. We'll get into that story next. We'll tell you how they came together and what the players think thus far. This is From the Diamond with Grant McAuley at Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
Now, back to more From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond, right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. I am Grant McAuley, live from the Kia Studios on a Sunday. Braves are closing out their weekend midway through a homestand, but a homestand that had a brand new look for this Braves team as the City Connect 2.0 debuted this past week. Thursday, they had a big launch party for it. I was out at Truist Park for that. And, of course, the uniforms debuted on Friday. They'll be worn throughout the weekend, and then we'll see them throughout the course of the season on Saturdays, as has been the usual tradition for the first iteration of the City Connect. But they went with a powder blue inspired jersey, white pants, though, this time around. I was a little bit surprised that there were white pants, but upon looking at it in reflection and really being able to take in the fact that this is not meant to just be a recreation, just a carbon copy of what had come before it, but an inspiration by past uniforms for the Braves. So with that in mind, design notes certainly were inspired by what I like to call the TBS generation of Braves fans. And there were a lot of us out there, the TBS kids, who watched the America's team throughout the 1980s. We had Dale Murphy. We didn't have a whole lot else, but we definitely had Braves baseball beamed into our living room day after day after day throughout the course of a long baseball season, and you just kind of fell in love with the Braves. And I think you have that nostalgia, that's that little soft spot for the uniforms, even if the teams weren't the best. But and then the Braves figured out that baseball thing starting in 1991, and that has worked out pretty well. But let's hear a little bit of the behind-the-scenes story from Braves creative director Insung Kim, who designed this new addition to the Braves uniform garb. I had the chance to catch up with him at the launch party for the City Connect this past Thursday at Truist Park. This is the second City Connect. The first one was a nod to a particular era in Braves baseball, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what went into picking the next creative vision for the new City Connect for the Braves?
Yeah, Grant. The concept for City Connect 2.0 for the Atlanta Braves is we have fans all over the country, all over Braves country, who grew up watching the Braves on TBS. We call them the TBS generation, right? And we hear stories about Braves fans who would come home from school, they would turn on TV, and the Braves were on. Just because, Ted Turner bought this cable station and had this awesome team that he purchased, and he would put them on TV. And so we wanted to celebrate those fans. And we wanted City Connect 2.0 to talk about that heyday of in Braves country when we got so many fans who fell in love with baseball and fell in love with the Braves during that era.
So knowing the rich tradition of the Braves and obviously the rich tradition that goes into Major League Baseball uniforms in general, I would imagine it's a very interesting challenge to have somewhat of a blank canvas, but also have a vision and an idea and a concept that you want to bring to life. So talk to me a little bit about picking not only the color palettes, the nods to the past, but also being able to literally stitch all of that together.
Designing a uniform, even for City Connect, is a very lengthy process. I would say it's probably a 2.5-year process. So we go back and we look at different concepts, different ideas. And for us, the concept that we really locked in on was this idea of Braves country is such a large region. And the reason for that is because we have the 6 states of Braves country. We also have this large reach of Braves fans all over the country and all over the world who grew up watching the Braves on TBS. That idea was something that we really wanted City Connect 2.0 to be about. And so that is why we have the powder blue jersey, because that is a reflection of the heyday when the Braves were on cable TV. We also, brought small little elements that are a nod to that. The jersey is a V-neck, because that is the jersey that the players from that era wore. We also have an ATL patch on the sleeve, which if you look at it, it's a nod to the old TBS logo. If you look down at the jock tag at the bottom of the jersey, it says Atlanta Braves in the skinny 3D letter font. That is another nod to the old Superstation. So there's small little details that we put into the jersey that that reference the TBS generation. But at the same time, it is an update. It's a modern update to it. So, we've got the red outline around the Atlanta letters. It's a brighter blue because we wanted this jersey to pop on the field. And we wanted a jersey to be bright and vivid for this new generation of fans. I mean, if you go out and watch youth baseball at all, you'll see that light blue is one of the most popular colors for uniforms for youth baseball. And so we thought, how cool is that we've got this new generation of baseball fans and Braves fans who just love bright blue, like powder blue, and this is the perfect time to bring that back.
A nod to yesterday, but also keeping an eye on what is going on today, and sometimes what's old is what's new again. And speaking as one of what I would call the TBS kids, somebody who grew up in the 1980s watching when Dale Murphy was pretty much the focal point of Atlanta Braves baseball, but as you mentioned, it was far-reaching. It was coast to coast, and Murph was an awfully popular player, so I know it was no mistake when you had the opportunity to delve back into the archives, if you will, from a uniform perspective, that when it was time to roll it out to Braves country, the nod to the Power Alley, that iconic Nike poster that Dale posed for way back in the 1980s. One of those that if you grew up in my generation, that was probably hanging somewhere in your room, or you knew a friend that had that poster if you couldn't get your hands on it yourself. So I thought it was really fun to come out and see you guys roll out the City Connect and also have a chance to put yourself in the power alley and take your own poster picture.
Yeah, we actually built the power alley set down in Florida at our spring training facility, and we had the guys like Acuna and Riley and Olson and Harris who were modeling the jersey for us, in the power alley set, holding a bright blue bat or a glowing stick that was reminiscent of the old Power Alley poster, exactly for the reason that you mentioned. We wanted to, have that connection of looking at the past, but updating it with our guys in our new City Connect uniforms. And we love the fact that we were able to bring it up here to Truist Park. We just love the fact that we're able to do that for our fans. And, to see their eyes light up, and they're so excited when they go in there and they're looking around like, oh, wow, this is really cool.
That's one of those kids to see it brought to life is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Might have to go get my picture before I get out of here. I do want to talk about a couple of the details that you mentioned that are kind of sewn in and incorporated into this. The TBS style patch with the ATL on the sleeve, I noticed. Also saw that the socks had the Superstation type script saying Atlanta Braves, because you do have the option to wear the higher socks. That's with right. This. You've also got the powder blue, as you mentioned, which was very popular of the era. I believe late 70s into pretty much the middle to late 80s. That was a popular thing. But the attention to detail that I noticed, just if you want to do the nod, is you mentioned the V-neck, but the fact this is a pullover jersey. It's not a button-up. That, I think, is another little aspect that's incorporated into a nod to the past with a lot of the future and the present in mind.
Yeah, and we also heard feedback from the players. The players said they really love wearing the V-necks because they're so comfortable. If you think about the heat out here in Atlanta, the humidity, wearing a V-neck versus a button-down is a little bit more comfortable. So we listened to the players, and we thought, you know what, for City Connect 2.0, let's have a V-neck in our uniform rotation so that guys can be more comfortable. Also, just historically, it's more of a direct connection to the old Dale Murphy powder blue uniforms. The other small details that we added is that we were very specific about the shade of powder blue for this new City Connect.
Right.
If I showed you all the different swatches that filled up my whole office with all the different fabric swatches, different Pantone colors that we looked at, we wanted to make sure that we nailed the powder blue exactly right so that it's a modernized version of the old powder blue. Because if you look back at the old powder blue jerseys, it's actually a lot darker than you imagine. It's funny, your brain plays this trick on you where things are a lot brighter and a lot more vivid in your mind, but when you actually see the old uniforms, it's kind of dark. So we wanted to make sure that this was a nice bright blue that when the team wears it on the field, whether it's day or night, it's going to look beautiful.
Yeah, and the lights may be a little bit brighter these days than they've ever been for Major League Baseball. Last couple of questions for me in terms of the overall detail to it and some of the other stylistic choices. Atlanta across the chest, the full scripting of Atlanta, the same style was used in the late 70s. You have the lowercase a at the start of Atlanta. The lowercase a is also on the hat, but there's also a lot of red that's incorporated into a powder blue type palette where with the 80s uniforms, the America's team, I like to call them, there was a home red, white, and blue. The road was the powder blue. A lot of folks may have kind of forgotten about that, but you were able to take a little bit of both and kind of mix them together.
Yeah, we have such a rich history as a team. I mean, we're over 150 years old, right? So for me as a designer and a creative, I have all this amazing toolkit of logos and designs that I can look back on. So in addition to the powder blue that our fans love and have been asking us to bring back, the lowercase a is a logo that our fans also love. And we thought, you know what, let's incorporate that into it. So it's kind of a hybrid of the powder blue as well as the lowercase a logo. So we've got that on the hat. We've got the lowercase a Atlanta logo on the chest. And I kind of think it's a really cool remix and a modern update of the classic powder blue uniform.
Yeah, remix is a really great way to put it. Last one for me, from a manufacturing standpoint, obviously Nike holds the rights to Major League Baseball uniforms. I'm just curious, as somebody who likes to think I'm creative, how much creative license was there for you? Was this truly a blank palette where you guys were able to just really choose the direction you want to go with these City Connects?
Yeah, Nike is an awesome partner to work with, and this City Connect is an opportunity for each of the 30 MLB teams to come up with a fresh look. And so it is a blank canvas for us to work with. Now, we work within the parameters of the brands that we have, but it's an opportunity for us to kind of showcase our design skills and flex our muscles a little bit and have fun and listen to the fans and really give the fans what they want. And for us, bringing back the powder blues was one of the feedback that we got. Using the lowercase a, celebrating the TBS kids was something that we really wanted to do, and this was a perfect opportunity for us to do all that.
Yeah, I think you checked an awful lot of boxes. Well, you and I are standing in the team stores. We have this conversation. The fans have gotten their hands on these. We've seen the players in some of these. When will we see these take center stage on the field?
So the City Connect uniforms will be worn every Saturday, just like we've done in the past. But for the first weekend on April 10th, 11th, and 12th, the team will be wearing them on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Well, should be very exciting. Looking forward to it. Congratulations on what was, I'm sure, a very creative and fun and collaborative journey, and an all-new apparel line for the Atlanta Braves fans to get their hands on, and it looks like from the turnout here on day one, you've hit a home run.
Thanks, Grant.
My thanks to Braves creative director Insung Kim, the designer of the City Connect 2.0, which we've seen the Braves modeling thus far in their series against the Cleveland Guardians this weekend. They'll wear them again on Sunday, and then we'll see them every single Saturday. And again, the Dale Murphy era of Braves baseball from the 1980s, the era I grew up on, was an obvious inspiration for this. And we're going to hear the full story of that iconic Power Alley poster that Dale Murphy adorned back in the 1980s. We'll hear that story. But Austin Riley was one of the players who gave a little bit of input on the design choices for the City Connect. So I caught up with him to get a review of the Braves' new uniform.
I think they're awesome. Like I said, I love the baby blue, love the little accent from the ATL on the side. You know, I like the outline in the red, and the hats. I think they really did a really good job on the hats and the helmets. And, you know, for me, he just asked, like, my big thing was I love the no buttons.
Yeah.
That was, like, my take. I was like, it's cool, it's hot here.
Yeah.
It's a little bit lighter, I think. That was the only question I got asked, and seeing it for the first time, I thought they did an unbelievable job on them.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, I guess, because it's new,
Yeah.
but it's also a throwback to the history,
Right.
even though throwbacks are kind of harder to get to these
Yeah.
days in baseball. I know you guys always look forward to wearing those 1974 jerseys
Yeah.
when you got the opportunity to do that. That was also a V-neck pullover,
Yeah.
so probably not a coincidence that those were also fun to play in.
No doubt. Yeah, like I said, the history behind it, the design, it's, you know, we wear our whites and our reds and our blues, and to wear something a little, I call it flashy, so it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of flair. Yeah, it's got flair to it. I don't want to embarrass you. I don't want to put you on the spot. I've talked to Dale Murphy over the years. He's told me you are one of his favorite players to watch because of the similarities between the two of you. Quite a compliment from a two-time MVP, a legend for this organization. Have you had a chance to kind of talk with Murph over the years? And I know his influence and the 80s style is obviously baked into this jersey, but just how meaningful is something like that to you?
Oh, I mean, for him to say that's a huge honor, and you know, like I said, I'm not flashy whatsoever. You know, take my knocks, take my homers, and run around the base, and you know, that's just kind of, you know, my dad's always kind of imprinted that on me. You know, you can't take this game for granted. As I know, it'll beat you up in a heartbeat. So you try to, you know, appreciate everything. But no, talking with Dale over the years, like I said, his knowledge of the game and what he was able to do out on the field, and you know, it's pretty special, no doubt. You know, we got to talk to him in spring. He talked to us as a group, and you know, just kind of the philosophy of what he took while he was playing, and how he hit, and you know, some good stuff.
Again, we'll hear from Dale Murphy coming up here, but let's go across the diamond. That was Austin Riley. Let's hear what Matt Olson, who grew up on Braves baseball, now he just happens to be playing first base for Atlanta, about his thoughts on how this new City Connect uniform stacks up. Somebody who grew up in Atlanta watching some Braves games, were there some things that you like about what they were able to incorporate and some of the inspiration for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think right away you think of the Dale Murphy powder blues, so I thought it was cool. I love the color, with a little new flair to it, with some red piping and stuff, and I think they look great.
Are you a fan of the V-neck, the pullover, as opposed to the button-up? And if so, I'm kind of curious, like, in general, why that might be the case.
I don't know, it kind of feels better. I can't remember if I've ever worn a no-button jersey before, but yeah, it just feels like you got normal T-shirt on, so it felt great.
The Power Alley thing was something you guys did a photo shoot to introduce and to launch the City Connects. That was something Murph was pretty famous for. I don't know if you grew up with that poster on your wall like I did, but certainly an iconic look. Was that a pretty cool thing to kind of reenact something like that for somebody who's meant so much to this organization?
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a thing that Murph did.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes it even cool. It was cool to start with, but cool that they kind of tied it back to that. And yeah, they did a good job with the jersey and, you know, promoting it and everything.
Have you had an opportunity to get to know Murph very well or talk to him a little bit over the last few years?
I've talked to him, you know, a handful of times. Just very humble guy.
Yeah.
Would never know the back of his baseball card by talking to him. Obviously a hell of a player, and, you know, somebody that it's great when he comes around every time. He's got good energy. You know, always gives us, you know, a good little pump up, and yeah. not enough good things to say.
I would echo that, Matt Olson on Dale Murphy there. But the City Connects, the debut, I would say, pretty popular. Thumbs up across the board, it would look like, as far as the City Connect concept is concerned. The Braves have themselves a pretty good one there. But where did it come from? Where's the inspiration from? Well, you've heard. It's from the 1980s. It's from Dale Murphy. It's from the Powder Blues. It's from the Power Alley. Let's talk about all of those things. In fact, let's hear from the man himself. I'll chat with Dale Murphy next, right here on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
Back to Grant McAuley for more From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It is a Sunday in the Kia Studios. We've been talking about the Braves' new threads, the City Connect 2.0, which debuted over the weekend. It brings back great thoughts for longtime Braves fans of the 1980s and of Dale Murphy in particular. His Power Alley poster was one of the many things that the Braves used to launch their throwback style or inspired City Connect over this past weekend at Truist Park. But I had a chance a while back to catch up with Dale Murphy to get the inside scoop and the behind-the-scenes story of how exactly that Power Alley poster came to be. And the other one that you may or may not know a whole lot about is the stickball poster that he posed with Doc Gooden as they played stickball in an alley in front of the Brooklyn Bridge. Let's hear from the Braves legend, Dale Murphy, right here on From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Murph, it's always great to catch up with you. I always appreciate the time and the conversations, and today I'm kind of excited to have one that maybe a lot of folks haven't heard before, because we get to revisit, I think, a time in Braves history, a time in your career that a lot of people probably remember quite vividly in the form of not one, but two amazing posters.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Back in the 80s, Nike had the poster thing going. It was a big deal, and I got to do two of them. So, I love to share the stories, and like I say, it was such an honor back then, to have them approach it and say, hey, we want to do a poster. And I was really lucky and had a lot of fun doing both of them.
Well, absolutely. And so let's kind of dive in there, because I've always been a little bit curious. I mean, I know some of this story, but for those listening out there, they may have seen the Power Alley poster and thought, hey, either I had that as a kid or I always wanted that when I was a kid. I needed to be on my wall. There's a generation of Braves fans anyway that grew up with this iconic poster from Nike. It's got you in that dark alley, like perfectly lit there, clad in those powder blue Braves uniform and holding a bat that is glowing like a lightsaber. So we'll get into how they pulled off all the effects in a moment, but who originally approached you with this idea, and how did the concept of Power Alley kind of all come together?
I'm not sure who reached me. I know as far as the shoe representative, the guy that visited all the clubs was Bill Frechette. And he's kind of a legendary guy with Nike. He was there at the beginning when shoes got to be a big deal. Now, basketball shoes were obviously the driving force in running shoes. And I can remember I was talking to Bill with Nike, and I was, from Portland, Oregon, and I was excited to be a Nike guy. So when I first started wearing Nikes, I wore them for a couple of years, and I had some really good years, and they would give us a few $1,000s worth of merchandise. And finally I said, hey, Bill, how about sweeten the pot a little bit? I think I, maybe worth a little bit more merchandise anyway. They weren't giving us cash. And he said, well, Murph, you know what? We don't sell many baseball shoes. We sell basketball shoes. And that was, in the day, obviously, when I don't even know if kids could go buy Nike baseball shoes then. They were just getting started, and now you can obviously get Nike baseball shoes. But that is part of their business, but their big business obviously is sneakers and basketball shoes. And so Bill probably pulled me aside, in spring training and said, hey, we're going to do a poster of you, and some people will be in touch. And then they just set up a time, and I met the guys from Nike, and I wish I could remember the names of the photographers and the designers and the idea guys. It was interesting. A few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, Nike invited Nancy and I back to their campus there in Oregon, and we got to talk to some of the artists that create their shoes, and they wanted me to talk about Power Alley and stickball. So that was a real thrill, and there was still someone there that remembers, the conversation. He wasn't at the photo shoot, but he remembers, Nike getting in touch with me and then coming to spring training and doing the photo shoot.
You mentioned stickball. We're going to get to that a little bit later because Power Alley was just one of the two posters, and the story for each, I think, is super fun. But as far as Power Alley, like, you arrive at the photo shoot. Where exactly was that? How did they set up this concept? And ultimately, I guess we all want to know, how did they get you that glowing bat? Because as a kid, it was like different parts of my imagination were coming together, because there's Dale Murphy. Does he know Luke Skywalker? How did this all work out?
Yeah. Well, they came to me, and I have in my possession the storyboard. Well, the artist's rendition of what they were trying to do.
Wow.
Kind of just a really quick sketch of, the idea of Power Alley is a baseball term. And they got there a couple of days early, came over and picked me up at the Braves clubhouse in West Palm Beach and said, so Power Alley is a term, baseball term. We're going to riff on that phrase. Power alleys are the gaps to left center and right center. And so what we've done, and they were telling me this, and here's the picture of the concept, we're going to get you in an alley, and we're going to powerize this alley. So, and it was all real. None of it is done on a computer. It was actually an alley, a dimly lit alley in downtown West Palm Beach that they found. I would love to remember where that is and go see it again. So they, I just drove over. They gave me the address, and well, first of all, back up, so they go, Murphy wants you to wear your baby blue jersey. And John Holland had already packed up all the game jerseys. This was late in spring training, the game uniforms that we only used a couple times in spring training. Usually we wore something that was just for spring training. They were back in Atlanta. So they go, well, we need a number 3 baby blue uni. So they ran over to the Richmond clubhouse, and that's why it doesn't say Atlanta on it. That's why it says Braves.
Wow.
Because it's actually a Richmond Braves jersey. So it said Braves. So it's actually not my jersey. It's a Richmond Braves number 3 powder blue uni. I did have some pants that we wore. We just wore a different jersey for spring training, but I wore my game pants. Oh, and they had a new shoe. If you look at the shoe in Power Alley, it's a white plastic cleat they thought might work better on AstroTurf. So we want you to wear this kind of a plasticized cleat. We're going to stand you in this alley. We're going to light it kind of dimly, but we're going to powerize it with this bat. And it was literally a yellow wiffle ball bat that they had inserted a fluorescent light bulb.
Huh.
So it was, the wire was coming out, but they didn't want it to show. So they ran it up my sleeve and down the back of my shirt, down the back of my pants. And if you look closely at the bats sitting there in the alley, you can see a little bit of the wire. The wire goes along the bats, and the wire goes up the wall, and they plugged it in to an outlet that they found in this little warehouse. And so they give me this bat, they wet it down, and I'm standing in water, and they go, okay, Murph, we're going to plug this thing in. And I could tell an electrician had not done this. But then they took the picture. It wasn't Photoshop, but you could tell they touched up the photo a little bit to make it glow a little bit more. But for the photo, it was actually a glowing yellow wiffle ball bat, and they didn't want me to smile, so I'm looking kind of tough. And that's how the phrase, like you said, this glowing bat in Star Wars was popular. So a lot of people would call it the lightsaber poster. But it was really nothing to do with that, but just somehow trying to make this alley look powerized and doing kind of a riff on that phrase in baseball, Power Alley. So I thought I was going to get electrocuted, but I survived the shoot, and it was just a great moment.
And not only did you survive the moment, but a lot of posters got sold from that particular photo shoot over the years. And I think if they were to re-release that, they would sell even more posters, and maybe we can touch on that in a minute. But you've shared a lot about Power Alley as we chat with Dale Murphy here on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on 92.9 The Game, because I think it's one that so many people remember. But I was always fascinated by the stickball poster. It featured you and Doc Gooden out in the street going one-on-one in that classic kids game. When did this idea get pitched to you, and what was it like shooting that one alongside Dwight Gooden, who was at the height of his popularity at that time as well?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was really lucky to do the Power Alley poster, but I just love the whole concept of stickball. So it was a couple months before the All-Star break. Nike called me and did most of the talking to my agent, Bruce Church. And they said, hey, we've got an idea. And, of course, they were getting bigger. And this was I believe it was 85, the summer of 85. They were, of course, doing really well, selling a lot of shoes, and wanted to get into the apparel, which they had already started, but there was really nothing like a baseball apparel line. So they had this idea. It was really marketing. The poster ended up being a great poster on itself, but it was the start of a line of clothing that Nike wanted to do, and they asked for me and Doc Gooden to be the representatives of it, and that line was going to be called Stickball. And so I was wearing a mock-up. They're up in my restaurant there at Murph's in Atlanta. It was a mock-up of a shoe that looked like a baseball shoe, but was a tennis shoe. And then I'm wearing sleeves, and I got this little Stickball logo on it. I think there's a 3 on mine, and then Doc is wearing some shorts and a sleeve too. And so the start of that was going to be the rollout of this new line of clothing. I guess the best way to put it is baseball-centric clothing. And Doc and I were going to be the face in baseball of this new line that they were going to open up, and they never did. It never happened. But the photo shoot, like I said, a couple months before, they said, hey, we think this will work. Doc and I were both at the All-Star game in 85 in Minnesota, and we, the Braves, played in New York right after the All-Star break. So they said, after the All-Star game, go to New York. You got a day off before you start the season again. And sure enough, we went over to this district. What they told me, and people have said, yeah, that's probably where it is. It was over in Brooklyn. They just had a great street, took some chalk and made a home plate and put a strike zone up. And they had these rubber balls that kids play stickball with. And they said, okay, and here's a big broom handle, sawed off, and we want you to stand in the box, and Doc's only about 30 feet away. I was like, well, I have no chance hitting Doc when he was 60 feet away. And they said, okay, let's shoot and see what happens. And it was fun. You can still, one of the World Trade Centers is in the background, and there's a dog just sitting out there in the middle of the street. You can barely see. And I've had a number of people that have gone to that location because you got the Brooklyn Bridge, I think, is in the background, but we're right under the Manhattan Bridge, which this district is called the Dumbo, the district under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So it's just right under that bridge, a bunch of warehouses. Now I think it's a bunch of condos. But I really like that one, just to share it with Doc. And I just think that concept of playing stickball really turned out really well. The favorite is probably the first one, but if I were to choose one to hang up in my house, I love the feeling of that stickball one.
Yeah, and what a great time to be able to share that with somebody else who was also, at that point, as far as baseball was concerned, if there was a short list of names who really captured the imagination of fans across the country, you were on that list. Dwight Gooden was certainly on that list as well. And these posters were part of a rather fun marketing campaign for Nike for a number of years, featuring some of its baseball athletes. I know there were a bunch of these, but I think that you got two of the absolute most memorable of that bunch, with Power Alley and with Stickball. As we wrap up there, I know you mentioned the potential for there being an apparel line. I love that number 3 Dale Murphy logo that they have on that shirt and on the shoes as well. Maybe at some point you can figure out a way to utilize that in the future. But I guess that kind of brings me to this question is, for a long time, these weren't really re-released or licensed back out. But in recent years, you've been able to do a little bit of something with the Power Alley poster in particular, haven't you?
Yeah, we've I thought the same thing you mentioned earlier, that, if they re-released them, it would be so fun for people that had them back in the day to buy them, and maybe kids would too. And it just, it keeps popping up. And we talked to them. I said, can we use these images? And they were pretty much like, yeah, go ahead. I put something out with it every once in a while, and, especially the Power Alley poster. And it's just kind of sitting there. And I talked to them about it. And, I agree with you. I think people would love to buy it. But, the other thing is maybe they could do it in a different format than a 2-foot by 3-foot poster. But these companies are all about looking forward, and I think the thing is they don't want to get too hung up on their nostalgia. But I agree with you. I think all things 80s now are pretty popular. That baby blue is pretty popular. And so I think it's a fun idea to keep putting some things out there from back in the day.
That was Braves great Dale Murphy discussing the Power Alley poster, the stickball poster, and as he just pointed out, well, what is old is new again. It is pretty popular, and the Braves New City Connects draw a lot from that history that we saw right there on those posters. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the fight on Tuesday out in Anaheim, what's been going on for the Braves over this first couple of weeks, and we'll be looking ahead to closing out the weekend and getting some NL East play started. It comes your way next on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
From the Diamond with Grant McAuley.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game on a Sunday afternoon. At the Kia Studios, Braves are closing out their business with the Cleveland Guardians. We're going to hear from their manager, Stephen Vogt, here in just a little bit. I had a chance to catch up with him over at Truist Park this weekend, but we got to talk about some things that have gone on for the Braves, and particularly some stuff that's affecting the pitching staff for Atlanta. But we have kind of, I wouldn't say buried the lead, because it's been, 4 or 5 full days now that we've had to kind of digest everything that happened on Tuesday night out in Anaheim. We've been talking about style points for the Braves this season from a uniform sense, but let's get into the week that was on the field and flash back to Tuesday against the Angels, where the Braves and L.A. came to blows because Reynaldo Lopez and Jorge Soler had a personal issue that boiled over. And why exactly? What's the history for this? I think we've talked about it a little bit, at least I know I have on my call-ins throughout the week, but Reynaldo Lopez has not been able to find ways to consistently get Jorge Soler out. And in his first interaction with Soler on Tuesday, well, Jorge, as he's been known to do, launched a 2-run home run. The Braves are big fans of his home runs when he hits them in their uniform, not so much off their pitching, but that's exactly what Soler did early in that game. Now, the next at-bat, it was a 2-2 count that had been worked by Soler or worked by Lopez, and he hit him on the wrist. And so you look at it on paper, maybe just look at the box score, okay, we hit a home run, then he got hit by a pitch. That seems pretty obvious. But if you watched it, I really didn't feel like there was any intent for Lopez. He was really just trying to, I think, find a way to get Jorge Soler out. He happened to hit him. I get it for Soler. You don't have to love it. Nobody's asking you to like it at all. He goes, he takes his base. There's no incident. The third time, though, first pitch, sails to the backstop. It's up, it's head high, but it's not that far inside. It just seemed like Reynaldo's reaching back for a little bit extra, thinking, all right, well, I've tried everything else. Maybe I'll just throw it as hard as I can and hope that he misses it. Well, he did miss it. In fact, Lopez missed his target. It went over Jonah Heim's head. It bounced right back to the Braves catcher, though. A throw goes down to second. Like everybody else, including, I think, all the broadcasts, you're looking at, okay, are they going to challenge the replay? There was a play at second. Did Ozzie get the tag on the foot of the runner who was sliding in? And the next thing you know, it's just an absolute benches-clearing incident that went from 0 to 60 in what seemed like a very quick amount of time, and you didn't really get the full feeling of it in the broadcast as it was playing out because they were in the middle of a replay. But come to find out that Jorge Soler did not like where that pitch was, even though it wasn't really close to hitting him. I think it was just the precedent of, I've already been hit in this game, and now you're throwing one head high as hard as you can, is sailing to the backstop. Like, what exactly are you doing? And I think what ended up happening, at least from my read on it, and from hearing Reynaldo Lopez talk about it, from hearing Jorge Soler talk about it, and from hearing Walt Weiss talk about it, which I'll get to the Walt Weiss of it in just a moment, but it just sounded like it was a miscommunication. Some wires got crossed between two guys that, look, Jorge Soler has Reynaldo Lopez's number. Reynaldo doesn't have to like that. Jorge does not have to like being thrown at or feeling like he's being thrown at. But the one thing you can't do is take matters into your own hands and charge the mound. That's exactly what happened. We had some haymakers. Most of them were missed. Reynaldo was holding on to the baseball, and I don't really know if there's a tactical advantage to that. In fact, I would say there's probably not, because even if you do make contact with something, I mean, you're so close quarters, it's not like you're trying to hit him again with the baseball, but he kind of crowned him on the side of the helmet. Could have ended up, I think, breaking a finger or breaking his thumb, something like that. That would have been some pretty bad news for Braves rotation that doesn't need any more stuff like that. But putting it all aside, Jorge Soler is a big dude. If you've been a Braves fan for a hot minute, you remember Jorge Soler is, if you look up the dictionary definition of what a slugger in Major League Baseball looks like, it's Jorge Soler. The guy's, about 6'4", about 230, 240 pounds. He's, carved out of granite. I mean, this is what a slugger looks like. And I would not want to have that guy coming after me. And in fact, I'm not alone in that thinking because Braves manager Walt Weiss did not want Jorge Soler out there trying to do maximum damage to anybody, including Reynaldo Lopez. Walt Weiss, when you watch the replays of this, it's terrific. And this is one of those times where, like, I'm on radio, and I wish that I had, like, the visual element to share with you as much as I love telling a good story, spinning a good yarn. But Walt comes out of the dugout, immediately just, the cap's out of here. I'm going out there. I'm going to make my presence felt. I'm going to diffuse the situation. And if you don't know this about Walt Weiss, you probably have heard it this week, but he is a trained MMA fighter. He's a black belt in Taekwondo. And I know, obviously, you're not going out there trying to throw kicks or win competitions or that kind of thing. Taekwondo may not be the thing that you can most easily apply to a benches clearing incident in Major League Baseball. But the fact that Walt has graduated to the jiu-jitsu and all of the kind of close quarters fighting styles, well, you saw a little bit of that because he was able to double leg take down Jorge Soler. He put him down. He wasn't looking to do any kind of damage to Jorge. He was just looking to neutralize the situation. And, man, after that happened, everything got pretty calm pretty quick. You had Mike Trout, of all people, out there kind of letting Reynaldo Lopez know he can come over to the dugout and kind of chill out. So you had a few people out there playing peacemaker. But Walt Weiss, I just thought it was tremendous. And his comments after that, which were basically, Jorge's a big dude and he was on the warpath. So had to go ahead and take him down before he hurt anybody. And Jorge Soler, for his part, how about this candid response was, I've got a great relationship with Walt, and I understand exactly what he was doing, and I got no problem with it whatsoever. Now, the league had a problem with this because they both got 7-game suspensions, they being Jorge Soler and Reynaldo Lopez. But as things would work out, and Jorge is still appealing his, but Reynaldo Lopez immediately entered into an agreement with the league to accept a 5-game suspension instead of the 7 games and immediately start serving it on Wednesday before they got out of Anaheim. And what that did for the Braves tactically was it allowed them to avoid having to make some big pitching changes to their rotation. They went with Bryce Elder in the opener against the Cleveland Guardians. And Martin Perez pitched yesterday, and we'll have to talk about Martin Perez here in a moment because he is no longer on the Major League roster. Chris Sale is slated to throw in the finale against the Guardians. And you got Grant Holmes, who can come back on regular rest and start Monday, pushing Reynaldo Lopez back to Tuesday. Now, I'll point this out for the folks who, and I got some feedback on this, that people weren't happy that he was not going to miss a start or multiple starts because he was involved in a benches clearing incident. Reynaldo Lopez is going to lose about $400,000 in pay. I saw that fight. I don't think it's anything that would involve needing to lose $400,000 over. That's just me, but those are the rules. You get suspended, you're suspended without pay. And some folks have said, well, he makes tens of millions of dollars. It's a drop in the bucket. He doesn't care. I challenge you to find the person that wants to take $400,000 out of their pocket and light it on fire. There are not too many people out there. And this is not spend it all on something frivolous. This is, you just can't have it. And that's not helpful. I think that's just, at least for me, that's just not part of the narrative that makes a whole lot of sense. But he's not going to miss a start. He is going to be out there on Tuesday. The Braves, meanwhile, did end up making a rotational move. And we're going to see how they kind of manage this. Because we talked a little bit earlier about Spencer Strider, if you're just joining the show. He is going to rehab on Thursday. We don't know exactly where he'll be, but 40 to 45 pitches, first minor league rehab start for Strider. They'll have, I'd say, at least 3, if not 4 rehab starts to get him really cranked up and ready to rejoin the big league team. So we're looking early mid-May. But the Braves did decide to DFA Martin Perez on Saturday. They designated him for assignment just one day after he held Cleveland to a run across 5 innings. Dylan Dodd was called up. He'll serve in a bullpen role, obviously. But this opens the door for something kind of fascinating that I think Braves fans are going to be a little bit more interested in than watching Martin Perez every 5th day, and that is the possibility of a couple of Braves prospects that the Braves could choose from to bring up, with the first and most obvious being Didier Fuentes. He can rejoin the big league club sometime soon, and he has been absolutely dominant from the start of spring training right on through his time in AAA and his brief look in Atlanta. So that's a tantalizing arm. He pushes, 98, 99 miles an hour on the fastball. The secondaries, I think he's done a lot of work on those pitches to give himself the opportunity to give you a little bit better accounting of who exactly he is. Because I said this last year. I said it earlier when we were sizing up the team coming into the year and he made the opening day roster. He was thrown out of the frying pan into the fire last year. It was necessity that had the Braves bring up a 20-year-old Didier Fuentes. And major league hitters were not very accommodating in his first taste of the big leagues, and I think some of it just had to do with some command issues on his fastball, and all of a sudden finding out that maybe some of these secondary pitches that will get minor league guys out, I'm going to have to rethink how exactly I'm using them and where exactly I'm putting them. So those tough lessons for Didier Fuentes, He just went right to work, making the adjustments. And we saw that in spring training, just how good he looked. So the opportunity to have a big arm like that in your rotation, I think, is tantalizing for the Braves. There are a number of different reasons that, Fuentes made the opening day roster, but one of the things we knew was he wasn't quite stretched out as Martin Perez was, or even Jose Suarez, who, that's another guy that how long is the leash for him as far as being the Braves' long man or the swing man or the sixth starter or whatnot? I would say probably not much longer than the leash that Martin Perez had. Now, if Martin Perez clears waivers, he could accept assignment, go back down to Gwinnett, and if the Braves need to add him back to the big league roster, they can. They also have Carlos Carrasco down in the minor leagues. We saw that last year. I don't know that there's a whole lot there other than you just need to have layers of depth, and it can be helpful. But Didier Fuentes, meanwhile, that's a tantalizing name to maybe add to this Braves rotational mix. And J.R. Ritchie has also been throwing great down in AAA. So those are a couple of options that are down there just on the cusp of perhaps being able to affect the Braves rotation. As I talked about earlier, you may have Spencer Strider, in the 3 to 4, week or so window in which he could return. And that makes your rotation better. But you're really not close to getting Spencer Schwellenbach back, and you're not close to getting Hurston Waldrop back. So you're going to need some guys to step in and do some things for you in rotation. And I think Fuentes and Ritchie could be a couple of guys the Braves are going to lean on for a few weeks and at least try it out. Because if you got Chris Sale, and if you got Bryce Elder, and you got Grant Holmes, you got Reynaldo Lopez doing their thing, you get Spencer Strider back, that's 5 right there. But if they do decide to mix in some of these younger arms, maybe this looks a little bit different as the season goes on. Either way, the Braves have another off day on Thursday. They don't have to make a decision for a little while longer, but those are some things to keep in mind as far as the Braves pitching situation is concerned. All right, Braves and Guardians will wrap up their series on Sunday night. I caught up with Guardians manager and former Brave Stephen Vogt. You'll hear that conversation next on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
I love baseball. Now back to more Grant McAuley and From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McAuley here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Closing things out for the weekend. Braves closing out their 3-game series against the Cleveland Guardians. Then they will turn their attention to National League East play, which we'll get into what the rest of the month looks like. Before we get one more interleague series in, and April will be done as the Detroit Tigers will be waiting on the other side of a whole bunch of games against the NL East, which as of right now sees the Braves sitting atop the division. We'll get back to all of that in a moment. Their opponent for this weekend, as a lot of the focus might have been on what the Braves are wearing, but for me, it's the opportunity to catch up with an old friend of mine from the minor league days, and I was a play-by-play broadcaster in the minors back from 2009 to 2012 in the Tampa Bay Rays organization, and one of the many great folks I was able to meet on that journey, riding around on those buses and putting in those long hours, Cleveland Guardians manager Stephen Vogt. Had an opportunity to sit down with him over at Truist Park and to catch up on a few of those things, reminisce about our minor league days, and also to size up what is a pretty good little team that the Guardians have put together under Stephen Vogt, who has been recognized as one of the better managers in all of baseball. Here's my conversation with Cleveland manager Stephen Vogt. We met in the minor leagues, which is about as far away from where we're sitting as it can be. At least it feels that way at times, but obviously it's great to have the opportunity to catch up. And a brand new season of baseball. How are things so far through the first couple of weeks for you?
Yeah, it's been good to see you again, obviously, by the way. Great times in Port Charlotte, Florida. Oh, yeah. And but no, we're off to a good start. We had a tough schedule to start, and it's not getting easier. Everybody's good, but was really proud of our guys. We went 4 games in Seattle, 3 in Dodger Stadium, and walked away 4-3, and had a winning homestand coming into Atlanta. So really, really happy with the way our guys are playing. We're young, but we have the same group back that we kind of finished the year with on a magical run, and everybody back with some reinforcements. So we're really excited about this young team, and we feel like we've got some good players coming as well. So really like where we are in Cleveland right now.
I think one of the more complimentary things you can say about the Cleveland Guardians is you guys seem to get the most out of your guys. You seem to have a team that plays pretty much as one, and I know there's no mistake around that. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of dedication that goes into it, a lot of guys being able to step up and do their role on a given day. Is that kind of how you would size up what you've been able to kind of develop in your time as manager here?
Yeah, I think, Cleveland's done that for a long time, even before I got here. But I think some of the things that we've really doubled down on since I've been here is we're here together. If we don't do this together, we have no chance. And you look at our roster, you probably don't recognize very many names, obviously. But when your best player is Jose Ramirez and plays the game the right way and wants to win more than anything else, you're going to follow suit. And so, our coaches coach, and we have to teach, and we have to develop at the big league level while trying to win, and that's not easy. But we feel like we've done that pretty well, but not well enough to win the World Series, which is our goal every year. And so we're continuing to push those things and continuing to work. It takes patience, but it also takes urgency. So it's kind of this balance that we have to find.
You brought up Jose Ramirez. I wanted to ask you a lot about him because 30 teams in Major League Baseball, every one of those teams would love to have a Jose Ramirez. He is dedicated to being in Cleveland for what looks like the course of his career, and that has to be something that, as you're making out that lineup every single day, feels pretty good to be able to pencil a guy like that in. Tell me a little bit about not just the player that we see on the field, but what he means to this organization.
Yeah, Cleveland is home for Jose. Obviously he's from the Dominican Republic, goes home in the winter, but he loves the city of Cleveland. He's thankful for the opportunity the organization gave him, back as an amateur when he signed, and he's loyal. He wants to be in Cleveland. He's expressed that over and over, and now they've inked that contract for him, and I'm just excited I get to watch him hit for another 7 years. I mean, he's truly one of my favorite players in the big leagues. Was before I got this job. Just a joy to watch play the game. He pushes his teammates. If you're not helping us win, you're going to hear it from Jose. If you're not working hard enough, you're going to hear it from Jose. And he leads by example, and he leads verbally. So he's an absolute dream to have as a manager, and it's really fun and an honor to watch him play every night.
Yeah, those are just the kind of players that every manager, every team, every fan base wants to have, and Cleveland's got a really good one in Jose. You're also developing some really nice players, and it seems like from a pitching perspective, the challenge of developing those guys in today's game is probably one of, if not the biggest things that you and your coaching staff have to deal with. It looks like you've got a good group of arms with, as you mentioned, more on the way. How do you kind of size up that side? Because I think the old adage is you go as far as your pitching will take you, but it seems like you guys do have some pretty great arms.
Yeah, we do. We feel really good. We feel like, we finished the year with a 6-man rotation last year, and, the schedule allowed for it with the extra player in September. So, and those guys went on a historic run. I mean, there was 19 straight starts of, 5 or more innings, two runs or fewer. Wow. And, they compete with each other. They push each other, and they're all young. I think Tanner Bybee has the most big league time at 3 years in their starting rotation. So they're a young group. They're relatively inexperienced, but they push each other. And we feel really good about the future of our starting pitching. And we've had a great bullpen, and feel like this is the deepest bullpen we've had in my 3 years. And so this organization has a long history of developing pitching really well. And I think Carl Willis has been here for a long time, 2 different stints, and his fingerprints are all over our pitching, and we have some really good other pitching coaches and pitching minds that really help develop that, and we draft well. So the pitching, we feel really excited about our pitching, and there's more on the way.
With all those things coming together, it seems like that tradition of rich pitching can continue for Cleveland. Now, you've been here for 3 years. The goal is obviously to win the World Series, be the last team standing. All 30 teams go to spring training with that every single year. We do know that. I would be remiss, though, not to talk to you a little bit about the success that you've had. I know accolades are not why you played the game. They're not why you're managing right now. But to be recognized as a manager of the year, you know how few of these jobs there are, but it does take a village to make that kind of award possible, I'm quite sure. But how did it feel to have the opportunity to be recognized in that way?
I mean, it's like you said, it's not why you do it, but it does feel good. And it show. I always say the writers recognize what we did. And I think, we were 15 and a half games back, had some off the field things that happened to us in the middle of the season. Those aren't there's no managerial handbook for how to handle those kinds of situations. And I'm thankful for the people around me, the front office, the coaches, the players, that we all just came together, and we can either let this derail us or we can have this kind of kickstart us. And to our players' credit, they never quit, and they had every reason in the world to quit last year, but they didn't. And so to be recognized by the writers, it's a huge honor for me and for my family. And like you said, I play a piece in that. I feel like the Manager of the Year award is definitely an organizational award, but it definitely feels good to be recognized for that.
Yeah, leadership, teamwork, resilience, all of those boxes you want to check for a team, and it seems like the Guardians have those in spades. Let me ask you about a change to the game that we're seeing at the big league level now, which is the automated ball strike, or the challenge system thus far. I've talked a little bit with Walt Weiss, some of the players around Atlanta. It seems like there's a bit of a learning curve that comes with this kind of thing, but overall, do you feel like the the reasoning behind them doing it is kind of paying off in a way that I guess complements the game, and maybe is just that next step in the evolution of just trying to make this game a little bit better, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, like I probably feel the same way Walton and the other Braves play. We're still learning. Yeah. We don't know how to use it. It's never been used to try and win games. You know, we've used it in the minor leagues, but that's testing it, and that's for guys to like save their at bats. But now we're trying to implement this on how do we win Major League Baseball games using this, and it's going to take some time. We're seeing umpires make adjustments already. We're seeing hitters and catchers and pitchers making adjustments of it, and I think it is one of these rules that whether you like it or not, it's here. So how do we use it? How do we get better at it? And I have a feeling here in a couple months, no one's even really going to notice it anymore. It's just going to be part of the game. But for a while, we're going to be talking about it a lot because it's new and similar to the pitch clock in my eyes. It's just a new rule that we have to get used to.
And those rules continue to be kind of incorporated. They beta test them a little bit, and then, like you said, you get to learn on the job. Across the diamond from you and that other dugout is Walt Weiss, a guy you got to meet in 2021 when some pretty magical things were happening here in Atlanta. He's taken over for a very well-tenured, very well-respected baseball man in Brian Snitker. What were your impressions of Walt as a coach and now as somebody that you're across the diamond from trying to scheme against to win a baseball game? How do you size up Walt Weiss, the manager?
I'm not shocked. I'm really happy for Walt, and I'm really happy for the Braves. I thought, when Snit said he was stepping down or going into retirement. We'll see how long that lasts for Snit. But I was just happy that they kept it with somebody with the Braves. I mean, there's so much history here, and I thought Walt knows this group better than anybody. He's a great leader, a great man, a great baseball mind. I learned a ton from him and Snit when I was here with the Braves for that half a season, and they're just great baseball people, and they're always 2 steps ahead. Nothing catches them off guard. They're very even-tempered. So I'm really happy for Walt, and it's a really good Braves team that we're playing, and hopefully we win the next 2 nights and ruin some happiness here in Atlanta, but couldn't be more happy for Walt.
Let me talk about where a lot of the learning happens, and that is the minor leagues. And you and I were at the same place at the same time on a lot of the same buses way back in the day. I'm just curious, as you kind of look back and reflect, I know you're in the midst of a season where your focus is where it should be, but it's pretty wild to look back at, say, 20 years in professional baseball for yourself to see where you are now. Could you have told that guy riding the bus back in, say, 2009 together that this is where you would be at some point in the next decade and a half?
I definitely could not have said that in 2009 or 10. I'm so thankful. A lot of people, you look back at the minor leagues and you can look back at one of 2 ways. Was it hard? Yes. Was it absolutely like long days, tough nights, tough travel, not the best accommodations? Absolutely. But that's what helps you grow, and that's what helps you appreciate where you are. And I think when I look back at my time in the minor leagues, I use more lessons that I learned in my minor league time now as a manager than I did in my big league time. And I seem to lean back on a lot of the Rays leadership, the things I learned from Mitch Lukovics, Jimmy Hoff, Jimmy Morrison, my coaches and managers that I had through the minor leagues, Matt Cotraro, they helped me learn how to become the baseball mind and the baseball person that I am. And I couldn't be more grateful for those times. But in a million years, I could not have said you and I would be sitting at Truist Park before a big league game getting ready to go.
I want to ask you about something I was thinking about from our minor league days that you may or may not recall vividly, but I certainly do as a minor league broadcaster, where sometimes you're just looking for anything that's going to entertain you. An umpire isn't able to show up for a doubleheader. Stephen Vogt gets called into duty. You were on the injured list at that time. But what do you remember about that? And how in the world did they decide that you're going to get the opportunity to be the umpire for a game of a doubleheader in full uniform, by the way, for the Tampa affiliate?
Yeah, you have no idea how many times I've told this story. People don't believe me. I mean, and why should they, right? So I remember it was a doubleheader. It was late in the year in 2009. We're playing the Cardinals, Palm Beach Cardinals. And it was game 1 of a doubleheader. Home plate umpire gets hit in the forearm wrist by a foul tip and has to leave and go to the hospital. So I go up to Jimmy Morrison, our manager, I go, "Hey, Jimmy, just so you know, I have umpired a lot. I umpired a lot in high school." And I said, "I would love to do the bases if their manager and the other umpire are okay with it. I'll be impartial. I'll do it. I'll take it very serious. But rather than have just one umpire, I'd be happy to do the bases." So Jimmy said, "I don't care. If they're okay with it, you can." So their manager said yes, and the umpire said yes. And so I umpired 5 2/3 of a minor league baseball game on the bases in full uniform. And I think I had 5 really close calls. I missed one of them, and it was in our favor, and I felt horrible because I knew right when it happened I missed it. But that's one of my favorite memories and can only happen in minor league baseball.
Yeah, minor league baseball will show you things you didn't even know were possible at a baseball stadium, but fortunately you didn't have to deal with replay review. There were very few cameras around for all of that, so it was fun to watch it, that's for sure. And one of those stories you tell people, and like you said, they just don't believe it. Let me leave you with one other memory I have. It was spring training or maybe in the season of 2010, so after you were back and on the field and doing the things that you wanted to do, I remember you coming up to me and saying, I wish I'd known I could go up to the broadcast booth. I would have sat in with you for a good portion of that 2009 season. I just want to let you know, I look at that as a missed opportunity. I think we could have had an awful lot of fun, all things considered, calling some of the craziness that is life in the minor leagues.
Yeah, that would have been fun. Again, those things that you wish you would have known you could have done, but I appreciate it, Grant. It's always good to see you and some really good memories we have together.
Stephen, it's been an incredible road, and to watch you have the opportunity to get up to the big leagues, have success as a player, and also to have success as a manager. It's always fun to see as somebody who was riding those buses around in the Florida State League, and I know you were on a lot more buses than that. Thank you so much for the time. Good luck the next couple of days, and we look forward to seeing you down the road.
Sounds great.
That was Cleveland Guardians manager Stephen Vogt. And again, a friend of mine, one of those people that like you connect with in the minor leagues because you're all kind of striving for the same thing. You're trying to figure out how to get to that next level, and perseverance. It definitely takes a lot of that to be able to do it, because not everybody comes in with that first-round draft pick credentials or the financial power that comes with being one of the top players in a draft. A lot of guys are having to kind of grind it out to try to figure out how they can level up. And for Stephen Vogt, just one of the better stories that I've seen when it comes to that perseverance that it takes, and to see every level of success he was able to have, first with Oakland, I guess, at the big league level, and later on briefly as a member of the Braves for that 2021 World Series run. Just very gratifying when you see it happen for one of the good people in the game, and now a two-time manager of the year. He's only been on the job for 2 years. I don't know where you go up from there. I know. You win the World Series. That's exactly what you want to do. So, again, great to sit down with Stephen Vogt, one of the great guys in the game. I don't think that Braves fans, though, want to see the Guardians get out of town taking 2 out of 3. We'll talk a little bit about closing out that series. Also, the grind that is ahead for the Braves when it comes to the schedule. The Braves will turn all their focus to the National League East opponents that are ahead. We'll talk about it next on From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
All right, play ball! Your place for all things MLB and our Braves. This is From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back one more time to From the Diamond with Grant McAuley here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It is the end of the weekend for the Braves. They got some Sunday night baseball to attend to. That means Game 3 against the Cleveland Guardians, the rubber match of this series. Braves scored 11 runs in the opener on Friday. It looked pretty good doing that in their New City Connects. And then they get shut out in Game 2, because that, my friends, is baseball. Sometimes you are exactly what you need to be, and the next day you can't figure out anything, and it's not for lack of trying. It's just the way that the game goes. But they've got 2 out of 3 on the table if they're able to get a good start from Chris Sale, let's say, and they're able to get some runs going again like they were a couple of days ago, where we saw some signs, I feel like, in that game that you needed to see. One of them was Ronald Acuna Jr. launching a tape measure home run, his first of the year. Acuna talked a little bit later in the game that, look, I feel good at the plate. My luck has not been what I need it to be. I have not seen anything that has me alarmed at Ronald Acuna Jr.'s start. It's not like he's up there completely lost, but he just hasn't been able to, I think, really click in the way that you expect him to. But as I've said, and will continue to, once he does, he has a way of making you forget when he had to go through the valley for a little while, because the peaks can be pretty high as far as that's concerned. But either way, Ronald Acuna Jr. will be leading off. We'll get to the lineups in just a moment, but I do want to talk a little bit about what is ahead for the Braves here and the opportunity that they have to not just take a good start to the month of April or the 2026 season, but to really do some, I would say, yeoman's work in the early portion of the season with some head-to-head battles against National League East division foes. Now, I touched on this last week as we were just setting up what the month of April is going to look like for the Braves, but they do have this last interleague series here for a minute against Cleveland. They've also played the Royals. They've played the Athletics. They've played the Angels in the early going. So when are you going to play the National League clubs, I guess was the question. Yeah, you got 4 against the Diamondbacks. You split that series, but the NL East battles are going to begin on Monday as the Marlins come to town for 3 games, and that will conclude this homestand. Then you will have an off day on Thursday, and as we talked about with the Braves pitching plans, that could go well for them because they will be able to continue with a 4-man rotation for a little while before they have to figure out who's going to come up and be their 5 again. If Martin Perez is able to clear waivers, he could be on that list. Jose Suarez, who, again, you might have seen or might not have heard, but Martin Perez was designated for assignment by the Braves on Sunday prior to the game against Cleveland. I would not say that Jose Suarez has a much longer leash as far as that's concerned. There are always those pitchers that are kind of on the bubble for your roster. You'd prefer not to have to cut them and run them through waivers every time, but it's a manageable way to do it with guys that may not attract the attention of other clubs. Whereas if you've got a starting pitcher that's out of options, like Grant Holmes is, or like Bryce Elder is, those would obviously be much more attractive options for other clubs out there. So you kind of try to figure out what you can with that final spot. But if they get Spencer Strider back here in the next few weeks, and Didier Fuentes and J.R. Ritchie are able to, either one or both of them, probably not both, but at least one of them, able to make a really good impression, you start to feel really good about your major league pitching depth at that point. So the Marlins are coming to town for 3 games. Then you have the off day Thursday. Then it's 3 games at Philadelphia, followed by 4 games at Washington. Then you come home again for 3 games against the Phillies, and then there will be another interleague series as the Tigers will roll into town to close out the month of April. But that right there is the opportunity with 6 games against the Phillies, with 3 games against the Marlins, and with 4 games against the Nationals, so 13 games in total against NL East foes. If you're able to really do some work there and take the majority of those series, not only have you set yourself up nicely in the standings, but you also start to create that separation that you're going to want going late into the season if you have to worry about any of the tiebreakers and whatnot when it comes to any of the playoff seeding. So you definitely want to handle business in the division. You want to be able to do the things the Braves have done over the years, and one of the things that's been the hallmark of the Braves is playing well in the National League East, particularly against Miami. So if they could get started next week with their first look at NL East opponents, doing the things that they need to do, that would go a long way towards setting the Braves up for the way that they want to be, to have the April that they would like to have. And if you're just tuning in or missed it earlier, had a great conversation with Insung Kim, the creative director for the Braves, who was in charge of the design of the City Connect 2.0. Invite you to check out From the Diamond wherever you get your podcasts. You can catch up on that. Austin Riley, Matt Olson shared their thoughts on it. And then, of course, the inspiration for this vintage City Connect was 1980s Braves baseball. And who is more synonymous with that than Dale Murphy, who joined me to talk about the Power Alley poster and give you some of the inside scoop on all of that a little bit earlier in the show. So you can find all of that wherever you get your podcast. From the Diamond is available to you right there. And, of course, we're available to you each and every Sunday here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. This was another one of those shows. We bounced around a little bit because we got a lot of basketball going on. It is that time of year. There's a lot of things happening here in the spring, but we'll be getting on our roll, I believe, in that 4 to 6 time slot as we move throughout the course of the season, or 5 to 7. We'll kind of see where exactly we fit in here, but a lot of good Braves and baseball talk will be ahead for you. We'll look forward to catching up with you again next Sunday, as From the Diamond will be coming your way right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Until then, as always, I'm Grant McAuley. This has been From the Diamond on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game, and until next time, so long, everyone.